Hello, hello. Happy Sunday, beautiful people. It is so very good to be here with each and every one of you on this Sunday morning as we gather together to celebrate the magnificence and significance of the presence and power of God operating, flowing in, through, and as us. We will begin with prayer as we always do. And this morning, I'd like to ground us in a reading from the Daily Word. The word today is joy, and the affirmation, God's joy blesses me each day of my life. The aroma of my favorite foods from childhood brings a happy memory to mind. Hearing the voice of a dear one warms my heart. Looking upon a newborn's face for the first time evokes a feeling words can't even describe. While the giddy excitement of a child's joy may now be a memory, the joy I know today still delights me. Each day I embrace more completely the joy of knowing I am a living expression of God. God's life lives as me. God's wisdom is within me, my guide to a deepening understanding of myself and the world around me. The love I share with people who are dear to me is God's love, living in each heart and expressing as each of us. What greater joy could there be? And the scripture, rejoice always. 1 Thessalonians 5:16. Again, the affirmation, God's joy blesses each day of my life. And so from this place of awareness, I invite you to close your eyes and take a breath in through your nose and breathe out from your mouth. Again, we breathe in and out. For a third time, grounding ourselves here into the present moment, we breathe in through our nose, out from your mouth. And we affirm, I am here now.
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 There is only one mind, only one power, only one presence that is working in, through, and as each and every one of us. He's in, through, and as you, in, through, and as me, in, through, and as all. There is one life. That life is Mother, Father, God. That life is good. That life is perfect. And that life is our life now. For we live, move, and have our being in God. And God lives, moves, and has its expression in, through, and as us. All of God is here now. All of love is here now. All good is here now. All abundance is here now. All wisdom, all intelligence is here now. Every answer, every solution, the way out, the way through, guidance is here now, here now, here now, here now, here now. Anything that you could ever need the I am to be, it be right now. And as we come into the awareness that God is all, God is good, God is love itself, and all of it is right here, right now, in this space which we are, together and virtually connected, we remember something powerful, that we are also one with God and one of God. We are one with each other through this profound divine awareness and divine connection. And because of that truth, we possess great power. Because of that truth, we are not alone. Because of that truth, we are never stuck. Because of that truth, there is nothing in opposition to us or God the good that is flowing in, through, and as us. God's joy blesses us today. And from this place of awareness, I speak from the awareness of joy. I speak from the awareness of roots connected to joy, roots that are drinking in joy, and that joy then expresses out through the external that I am. That joy then expresses out from the external that you are. We endeavor today to know joy in new, deeper, and profound ways. We endeavor today to know God as joy, as a personal experience in, through, and as our very own lives. We say, yes, joy. We say, hello, joy. We say, come in, joy. We say, be here now, joy. We say, hey, joy, you're within me. Express now all throughout me and all around me. God's joy blesses every area of our lives now because we are one with the joy that God is. So here and now, as we say yes, we surrender to it. We practice extraordinary trust. Joy be in our mind. Joy be in our speech. Joy be in our interactions. Joy be in every cell of our being. Joy be in our feet. Joy be in our legs. Joy be in our hands. Joy be in our eyes. Joy be here now with us. From this place of awareness that joy is, and it is right here, right now, I release this prayer and I let joy work its work magnificently, knowing that each prayer is heard, met, and responded to at every level of life simultaneously with ease, with ease, with ease. So we relax into this knowing, we relax into this moment, and from that place of expectation and relaxation, we say, Amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
So it is.
So it is, and so it must be. Well, hey, y'all. Happy Sunday. It is so very good to be here with each and every one of you. I trust that the vibration of that prayer, I hope y'all felt it like I felt it coming through me. I am excited about this day, not because it's Sunday, not because Sunday is special, but simply because it is another opportunity. As we sing the song, today is a gift given to us. So we honor it, we glorify it. We have a 24-hour gift to experience the magnificence and significance of God flowing in through and as each and every one of us. And that is a wonderful thing. So again, we say hello, we say good morning. It is so wonderful to be here with all of you. If you are a first-time guest, we especially want to say hey to you all. And we're happy that something brought you here today and that you chose to be here with us live to experience this powerful thing called the weekend service of Celebration Spiritual Center. We are confident that something will be done, something will be said, whether it's through the prayer, the meditation, the music, the sermon, that will empower you, support you, and absolutely thriving in your life. Because what we know to be true is that you're actually loved beyond measure. Mm-hmm. What we know to be true is that you're sinless. What we know to be true is that you have no reason to feel guilt or shame. What we know to be true is that you are perfect as you are. What we know to be true is that you remain as God created you. And this is good news. And we are happy to be the reflection of that good news right back to you, reminding you of you, bringing you back to you, restoring you back to you. So, hey, again, welcome to the weekend service. As you see here on your screen, this is how you access your digital connection card, because we'd love to stay in touch with you. And it's very easy to do. Just text the word welcome to that number, 347-472-1078. Nothing else needs to be added to that welcome message, and you'll receive a reply with a link. Click that link. It takes you to the form for the digital connection card. Enter that information. The most important piece of information is your email address if you don't share anything else. At that point, you'll be on the mailing list. You'll receive our weekly email that goes out every Friday, and any other correspondence from CSC that is necessary to share with the wider community. And so with that said, I think it's a wonderful time to tap into our news and updates, because many of the things you'll see and hear in our news and updates are also echoed in our newsletter. And there's some things that are in the newsletter that you're going to want to have access to based on what we're sharing today. Today is the third Sunday, which means it's what? It is God Talk Sunday. Yes, yes. What is the God Talk? The God Talk is your opportunity to ask questions. This is something that, unfortunately, and particularly if you grew up in traditional Christian environments, but also in other religious traditions, you're not able to ask questions, or you're only able to ask questions within a certain realm, right, of safety. And so what we recognize is that many people are coming to New Thought, are coming to metaphysics for the first time. And there's lots of questions that you may have, particularly because there's lots of unlearning that's necessary in order to fully embrace and walk this spiritual path. And so we created the God Talk as a way to receive questions, for folks to ask questions, for us to have an honest conversation. No question is off limits. But of course, in order to ask the questions, you got to be in the space. As we are meeting virtually, the God Talk happens virtually on Zoom, and so that link and password is shared via email. So for our first-time guests, I shared with you the digital connection card information. If you once you complete the digital connection card and submit your information, you'll actually receive an email with the God Talk information if you want to join us today. Again, this is why it's very important that you add your email address when you're completing that form. Otherwise, you won't get the link. You will see the information again on how to access the digital connection card throughout the stream. But again, we encourage you all to make time to be here with us at 1 p.m. It's always an enlivening time, an enriching time. I always leave there feeling better than when I walked in. I think we all do. The questions, no question is off limits, but we've talked about some of everything. And I love that that's our reality. One, because there's no censorship, but also, as I love to think about and say, is that if we can't apply these spiritual truths to the reality of what we're experiencing in our lives, then it's dead. It's useless. It's pointless. And what my life has continued to show me is that no matter what circumstance or experience I may be in, I can come back to these fundamental truths and tools and make use of them. So again, join us at 1 p.m. Every Wednesday morning, we gather together for the Momentum Prayer Call. That happens, as you see, the number is there on your screen. That does happen via phone. And what we do is we share a reading, just like I shared the reading to open our service today, and then we pray. It is always powerful because the reading grounds our prayer and informs our prayer. And we recognize that where our minds are, our lives will follow. And so what the Momentum Prayer Call is supporting you in doing is putting your mind on what is true, closing your eyes to the external world and reminding yourself of what is absolutely true. And so we gather together in prayer. It doesn't take long. It's about a 10-minute call max. But we recognize that for whatever reason, you may not be able to make that call live, and that's okay. And so the playback number is available. Every prayer is recorded. You can use that playback number right now. Enter the code and hear the most recent prayer, and that will always be available. But again, we encourage you to be there live because I think in terms of being intentional, in terms of developing a habit of just once a week, gathering together in this consciousness, continuing the momentum that we create on Sunday, this is something that is kind of a low-hanging fruit habit that you can develop that will pay great dividends in your life. So we encourage you to join us. Put this information in your phone, put it in your calendar so that you don't forget. Now, if you have a prayer request, you can send that prayer request to Prayer Champions at celebrationsc.org. Our prayer champions and Pastor Yolanda and myself, we are always holding the entire community in prayer. We are thinking of you, and particularly, we are knowing only good for you. We are knowing the best for you. We are seeing the highest and best for you at all times. But we recognize that there may be something that you have a specific request around. We also recognize that you may want to submit a request on behalf of someone else, a family member, a loved one, a coworker. Doesn't matter who it is, this is available to you. And so we encourage you to use that email address, submit your prayer request as we stand with you in prayer. We also encourage you to let us know when that prayer is answered, how that prayer is answered, the shifts that are happening in your life or the life of those that you've submitted a prayer request on behalf of. We know that prayer works, and it's always wonderful to hear how prayer is working in the life of this community. This month, we are highlighting a series from, I believe this is 2018, the Book of Psalms, as we are doing a Reimagine the Bible series this month. I thought it was good to tap into another Reimagine the Bible series. This is on the Book of Psalms, or in truth, the books of Psalms, which is something that I talk about in that first message, that actually when we think about Psalms, first of all, we think of the Bible as a single book. It's not, right? It's a compilation of books, right? So the Bible is almost like a mini library. But then when you delve in a little deeper and you start to look at, for instance, Psalms, it's actually the books of Psalms. Psalms is actually 5 different books. And so I think you can learn and unlearn some wonderful things about the Bible, about Scripture, about Psalms, but particularly metaphysically, Psalms, psalmoi, that word, the Greek word meaning praise or praises, What does it mean to praise? What does it mean to worship in the context of metaphysics? I love to quote Ernest Holmes, where he says, an evolved soul is a worshiper of God. But what does that mean? And so we delve into some of those ideas in the book of Psalms. Or this series rather, we delve into the meaning of the word Lord, and I take us deeper. Many of you know kind of a New Thought 101. When you read the word Lord, it's law. I was watching a interview recently, discussion around the life and ministry of Reverend Ike, who always said, the law is my shepherd, I shall not want. Oh, which is so powerful. I feel it every time I think about that. But what does that mean, right? And so we delve into the depth of what that really means, which is absolutely powerful. So I encourage you to check out that series. Go to our YouTube channel. It's there. It's featured on the homepage of our YouTube channel so that you can access that playlist at any time. We encourage you to share, like, comment, and subscribe. Whatever platform you happen to be watching right now, share this. Share the YouTube link on one of your social media channels. Make sure, of course, that you're liking this particular stream, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. And of course, if you're on YouTube, subscribe, because this is how you can get notifications and know what's happening as we post other videos throughout the week. By being a subscriber, that taps you into that information. Let people know about this good thing called Celebration Spiritual Center. Well, that completes our news and updates for today, which means we have the awesome opportunity to now go within as we are led in the meditation experience with Pastor Yolanda.
Yes, it is time. It is time to affirm. It is time to experience. It is time to allow the words to be more than the words on the page or the words that I say. It is time to just open to something deeper within the words, something that we get to live by, something that we get to have animate our very being. And this month, I love this affirmative thought, for it is a really deep spiritual truth that we live, move, and have our being in God. It would be like there's no spot where God is not. That's a shorter way of saying it. But it would be like trying to describe to a fish what they swim in. The fish just moves in it. It just has its being in it. It just moves from place to place. To say, do you know you're in water, would be weird. But sometimes we've forgotten that we have our beingness in God, that wherever we are in our experience, God is there. And that means that wherever we are, we have an instant pipeline and connection to answers. Instant pipeline and connection to peace, to joy. We live, move, and we swim in it. In prosperity, we live, move, and have our being. Whatever word you choose for the name of God. In love, I live, move, and have my being. If the word God is triggering for you, but we live, move, and have our being in it, and it in us. So let us take this opportunity to feel it, not just think about it, not just say the words out of our mouths, but to feel it. And I can't get into your experience and tell you how to feel it. I can just point you in the direction of the feeling tone. I can just remind you to breathe and let go and experience God within you for yourself. And so we take time every week to do that. We take time to have a meditation experience, to breathe, to connect, and to allow the truth to be the truth in, through, and as you. So let's prepare for our meditation experience. Go ahead and bring yourself to a nice, easy, upright position, feet firmly on the floor, making contact with the earth beneath you, seated upright in a chair on your sofa, but seated upright. And for now, planting the palms on the tops of the thighs. And now, from this place of groundedness and connection, go ahead and look around the room. You see, our mind might have already gone off into the future. Oh, I know what PY is going to do next. Or your mind might still be in the past or worried about something. But I need you to be here. I need you to feel your feet on the floor. I need you to feel the palms on the tops of the thighs. I need you to know that you are in a safe place to experience God. And that you are ready to allow this experience to have its way this time, not like it did last week or not like it will next week, but to live, move, breathe, have your being in God. And from this place of knowingness and safety and openness, allow your eyelids to close. For you see that we live, move, and have our being, whether our eyes, our eyelids are open or our eyelids are closed, whether we recognize the truth that God is here or not, we live, move, and have our being in it, right here, right now. Few moments of just noticing the breath, that thing that requires nothing of us, that is given to us by this power that animates us, that flows on the breath. Just notice. And whether the breath appears to be deep or shallow, it matters not. We make no judgments of the breath that is giving us the reminder of life force moving. We make no judgments. We just allow and are grateful for the movement of breath. Beautiful, everyone. Now, let's take conscious control of the breath like we can take conscious control of our thoughts. Let's take our energy and our focus and our intention and send it into the low belly. As you focus there, together we're going to inhale for a count of 4. Inhale, expand the low belly. Hold for a count of 4. And open the mouth, relax the jaw, and sigh it out. Count of 4. Again, into the low belly, expanding, making room for the breath. Hold it there. And sigh it out. In through the low belly, up through the rib cage now, expanding the sides of the body and the front of the body. Hold it there. And open the mouth. Relax the jaw. Sigh it out. And we allow the relaxation and the silence at the end. In preparation, inhale, expanding the low belly up through the rib cage, expanding the front of the body, just making more room for breath. Hold it there. And relax the jaw, hearing yourself release the breath. Sigh it out. And relax at the end. In through the low belly, up through the rib cage, now allowing the breath to rise through and to the heart, center of the chest. Hold it there. And release whatever you've been holding. Sigh it out. And again, in through the low belly, up through and to that altar of love. Hold it there. And sigh it out. And without collapsing the body, release all the air. And let's connect and practice a few rounds of how we are intentionally breathing and how life wants us to breathe fully, completely, fearlessly, in and all the way up. And this time, when you reach the top, close the lips, and when you're ready, exhale for a count of 6, nice and slow, through the nostrils. And noticing the quiet at the end as we prepare for the next breath, breathing in through the nose, lips closed, and when you're ready, exhaling through the nose, signaling the brain and the body to relax, reminding yourself that you live, move, and have your being in God. You are like a fish that cannot be outside the ocean. You live, move, and have your being in it. You swim in it. You are propelled in your life by it. And you are loved and held by it. All the wisdom that ever existed, you have your being in it. All the power that ever existed, you have your being in it. And all the clarity that ever existed exists in you now. Beautiful, everyone. Let's take this relaxation into our feet, sending our focus into the feet, our breath into the feet. Maybe you raise the heels or wiggle the toes. Notice if there's any tension in the feet. Stop the movement. Relax the feet. There's a gentle release as the feet make contact with the earth. There's an energy percolating underneath the soles of the feet, that we are connected to the earth and beyond. Allow that energy to flow up through the soles, across the ankles now. Breathing into the ankles. Relax the ankles. Energy flowing across now the shins and the calves. As we release the breath, we relax the shins and the calves. Energy flows now across the knees. Relax the knees. That flow of energy is continual, eternal, infinite, and it flows across the thighs, the glutes, the hamstrings. Go ahead and relax the thighs, the glutes, and the hamstrings. Noticing the lower half of the body now. releasing it. That energy gathered at the base of the spine is making its way up, traveling. That Kundalini rises. As we breathe in, exhale and allow. Breathing in through the nostrils and exhaling through the nostrils, we release and we allow. Energy rises in and up. Exhale and allow. And up. And up. And releasing the breath and anything that would prevent you from knowing you live, move, and have your being in God. Energy rises in and up. Exhale and allow. And up. And up. And out the crown of your head. We allow that energy to gather above us all. And if we feel so led, we send this energy to anyone in need of knowing they live, move, and have their being in God. As we give, we must receive, so we allow the energy to flow back down through the crown, across the third eye, down the throat, across the shoulders, down the arms, and out the fingertips. And from this place of openness, scan your body and notice if you're holding any tension anywhere. Send the breath there. Send the knowingness there. Send the relaxation there. Turning the palms up onto the tops of the thighs, making contact, index finger and thumb on both hands, extending the other fingers, leaving that palm open. We allow ourselves to be in Gayana Mudra position of openness and wisdom, connecting our individual consciousness to the divine. For we live, move, and have our being in God. I will monitor the time. You take the inward journey. If the mind wanders, it's okay. Bring it back to love, to light, to wisdom, to prosperity. For you live, move, and have your being in God. I live, move, and have my being in God. We live, we move, we have our being in God now. with your eyes still closed, we enjoy this time and experience of being connected with your eyelids still closed. We honor the openness, the feeling of energy moving through us in a relaxed fashion. With our eyelids still closed, we remind ourselves that we don't live, move, and have our being in struggle. We don't live, move, and have our being in hustle or grind. We live, move, and have our being in ease and effortlessness. We live, move, and have our being in God. Let's bring the ease back with us. Let's bring the love back with us. Let's bring the joy back with us. And let us prepare for our return, releasing the mudra, turning the palms down onto the tops of the thighs, making contact there. Inhale, draw the shoulders up by the ears. Exhale as we release the shoulders back and down. Inhale up. Exhaling through the nostrils, releasing the shoulders back and down. Keeping that nice, easy, relaxed breath in through the nostrils. Exhaling, releasing the shoulders back and down. Bringing the palms together in Jhana Mudra, heart center, prayer posture. Bowing the chin towards the fingertips. And just pausing there to notice the opening at the base of the neck and all the way down the spine. Allow the eyelids to gently float open. Find a nice soft gaze, gentle, no strain on the eyes or the experience. Inhale, raise the chin, raise the gaze. Releasing the breath, keeping the softness. Namaste.
Yes, yes, yes. Namaste. Thank you, PY.
Welcome.
Well, we are in the second week of our series, Finding Eden, and I'm looking forward to sharing some more with you as we are looking at the second account of creation, Genesis 2 and 3, colloquially known as the story of Adam and Eve. But of course, before we get into the sermon, we're going to hear from Soul 21, and then I will be with you on the other side with today's sermon, Breaking the Binary. I'll see you on the other side.
I am the wave, you are the ocean, all that you are, I am. One with the one, all of creation, all that you are, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am, I am the way. You are the ocean.
You are the ocean.
All that you are, I am.
I am.
What God is in the large, we are in the small.
With the one,
All of creation.
all of creation.
All that you are,
All that you are, I
ocean.
You are the ocean.
All that you are, the love, the peace, the power, the abundance, the prosperity that you are. I am one with you.
With the one.
All of creation.
All of creation.
All that you are.
All that you are. I am.
Now we know that I am is our God name. And so we affirm this power, this truth. All that you are.
All that you are.
Anything you can name God to be, it's the truth of who you are.
All that you are.
I am. All that you
All that you
Yeah. I am is your God name. And whatever follows I am, it will be. And so right here, right now, we want to affirm and follow these truths that we are love, I am love. I am peace. I am worthy. I am sinless. I am prosperous. I am abundant. I am helped. I am service. I am. I encourage you to begin to affirm right here and right now. What is God to you? And affirm that I am that thing. Because we know the truth. If you speak the words I am, you can't point outside of yourself to say I am. If I say I am and point to the sun, I can't be talking about the sun. I must be talking about me. So when I say I am light, I am whole, I am wholeness, I am holy, I am divine. I am. Oh, Cross. Then, big car on bass.
salvation. I am peace. I am free. I am free. Yes, I am. Free, free, free. I am. Oh, I am. Somebody needs to hear this. I am healed. Affirm that. I am healed. I am healed. Yes, I am. I am healed. Oh,
Oh, my. Woo! That was good. That was powerful. Thank you, Soul 21. Thank you to the CSC band. Shout out to Carlton and Frank and Ben, aka Cartoons, and of course to Zane West on the drums. So very good to be here with each and every one of you. Always grateful for the music ministry. Always grateful for the consciousness in the music. We at CSC, the New Thought Gospel, is something that's really only happening at CSC in the way that we do it. And of course, it is a powerful vibration. It supports us in absolutely, absolutely remembering and knowing what's true. And when we put these truths, a melody to it, it sticks. And I'm sure that many of you find yourself singing these songs and humming these songs. I trust that you use them in any way that you need to support you in staying grounded and staying rooted in spiritual truth, not just in times of crisis, but especially when things are good, so that you can remember when the crisis shows up. Well, hello again. Good morning, almost good afternoon, but whatever time it is where you are, I know it is a good time, and I am happy to be here with you. So we are in our series, Reimagine the Bible, Finding Eden. And as I shared last week, I do the Reimagine the Bible series to support you in thinking about Scripture differently. Now, as I said earlier during the news and updates, right, the Bible is actually like a mini library, right? It's a compilation of books. And even those that we have been taught to think of as an individual book, like the Psalms or even Isaiah, if you will, right, are actually separate texts, right? And it's important to know and understand that because if we start to break that apart, it immediately starts to shift and change how we think about the Bible. But more than that, of course, the Bible has been grossly misinterpreted, mistranslated, of course, misused. It becomes a weapon of mass destruction. And so we've been using the Reimagine the Bible series over the 10 years of CSC to shine a new light, right, on these scriptures. As I also said last week, in this moment of my life and ministry, I'm really just most interested in decentering the Bible because I think it is being used now as sort of the ultimate, not now, but it is being used and has been used as sort of this ultimate authority, right? Because the Bible says it, or because I read it in the Bible, or because someone translated or interpreted the Bible in a certain way that it's fact and ultimate truth. And that's just, honestly, it's just really small-minded to think that, right? And so we've talked about the many ways that is. But in this particular series, Finding Eden, we're looking at the second account of creation, otherwise known as the Adam and Eve story. And yes, it is the second account of creation because the first chapter of Genesis gives us one creation story. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And there's no apple, there's no serpent, there's no tree of life, there's no tree of the knowledge of good and evil, there's no Adam, there's no Eve. Completely different story, written for a completely different purpose, and influenced by completely different things. In this second chapter and the third chapter of Genesis, we get the second account of creation, which is a completely different story. And of course, that story has been grossly misinterpreted. So we started last week with leaving Eden is necessary. Starting to uncover many of the different things that are happening within the text that are overlooked, misunderstood, misinterpreted. But more importantly, one of the key pieces that I wanted to bring to your attention as it relates to leaving Eden is necessary last week is that the serpent is not a bad character. That actually the serpent was the perfect character to use in this way because the serpent represents throwing off the past and continuing to live, right? The serpent understood that actually life is a cycle, right? There's birth, life, and death or decay. And then we go right back from the decay back to life. And it understood that. And of course, we recognize that the serpent, it sheds its skin, right? It goes through this constant process of renewal. And so the invitation, when we understand the symbolism of eating of the apple of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was actually giving birth to life, the life experience that we understand as humans, right? We actually should understand metaphorically the garden in the East in Eden as pre-physical, right? We hear the story and read the story like it's a physical place on earth and this happened on earth and then that's why humans are experiencing certain troubles, right? But actually, metaphorically, it's talking about we're leaving this wholeness, this innocence that's pre-birth, and then eating of the apple is the equivalent of giving birth, right? Being birthed into this life. And that's the only reason that then the woman in the story is the one that eats the apple, because all of us are born by a woman, born of a woman, right? Again, I quoted Tupac, right? We came from a woman, got our name from a woman, right? That's just a truth, right? And so that had nothing to do with that there's something wrong with women. Actually, it has to do with there's everything right that's women, which is why Eve is given the name, or the woman is given the name Eve, mother of the living. And so then we understand that this really is a symbol of our incarnating into this life experience as humans. And so that immediately starts to shift and change some things as we think about this story. But of course, now that the apple has been eaten, now that the characters in the story, which are you and me, right? Every character in this story represents an aspect of ourselves. Now that they have eaten of the tree, there's now an angel guarding the garden that was placed at the east. And of course, we are symbolically now, we're thrust into this world. We're thrust into this life, which is reflective of duality, which is reflected of good and evil, if you will. So last month, I posted a video on Instagram, and someone commented with a question on that video and said that, I'm curious about your take on duality, light and dark, above and below. This was in response to a video where I had shared that neither hell nor the devil are real, that in truth there is one power, that power is God, that power is love, and there is nothing in opposition to it. And I think this is an important question, right? I think it's also a question that many people do not ask, because in truth, I think duality is taken for granted as though it's truth. Like, of course, there's good and there's evil and nothing else. Of course, there's right and there's wrong and nothing else. Of course, there's up and there's down and there's nothing else. Of course, this is what it is. And so duality has even been accepted as it's the way it is. And because of that acceptance, unfortunately, then duality has led to wars and all types of violence. It has led to infighting. It has led to separation. It leads to othering. And as much as duality is a part of life, because yes, there is good and there is bad, the acceptance of duality without the questioning of duality causes much harm. And so the individual and society, which does not question this or any assumption for that matter, is then ruled by ignorance. And mistakenly, that ignorance people call God. So let's go back. Let's go back to the second account of creation. And let's go to Genesis verse 9. Again, I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version, always. And we read this in the text. Out of the ground the Lord God made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, according to this verse, a whole bunch of trees were created. But in this particular story, in this account, two of the trees are named. One tree is named the tree of life, and the other tree is named the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, real quick, and this is kind of an aside, but I got to say this because I think this just helps us debunk this idea of original sin as a concept. If Adam and Eve have yet to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, how is it possible that they committed a sin if they were not yet aware of good and bad or good and evil, right? I mean, that would be impossible, right? There was no way for them to know. If this tree is the thing that gives you the knowledge of right and wrong, then there's no way they could have known that they were doing wrong. And so the idea of this being an original sin is really a false idea. It's an empty idea because they weren't aware of it. And then as we understand the symbol of the serpent, as we talked about last week, we understand that differently. At best, we could call it, if you want to look at it in a negative context, which the original sin does, you could call it the original deception. But in truth, what I would call it is the original invitation. As we talked about last week, that this cycle and this conversation that happens between Eve and the serpent is a conversation that's happening within us all the time. It's the conversation that has you move from being a child to a teenager, from a teenager to a young adult, and on, right? There's a letting go of a certain reality and thrusting into a new reality, right? Sometimes that's even, I'm thinking right now, becoming a parent, right? There was an invitation. I had to eat of the apple, right? When my daughter Malcolm Anaya was born, I'll never forget that day, and that moment plays in my mind so often, a beautiful and glorious day, but something happened to me that day, right? And parents that are watching, I'm sure you can relate, right? And so the original invitation is another way to think about this. But it's impossible for it to be original sin in the way that we have been taught traditionally to think about sin in terms of good and bad and right and wrong when they weren't aware of wrong, right? So how could you call that a sin? Okay, I just got to say that, right? And I hope that freed somebody today. So now that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we have this named tree. This is the tree of duality. It's actually the binary tree, if you will. It's the tree, in truth, of right and wrong. It's the tree of left and right, up and down, male and female, God and humans, Republican and Democrat, promiscuity and celibacy, monogamy and non-monogamy, gay and straight, cis and trans. Think of all of the different dualities and binaries that we're dealing with in our society and have been dealing with in human form, but particularly as I think about sort of the modern conversations and the modern debates. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is it's the tree of opposites. And of course, when we don't reconcile these opposites and when we don't understand even how and why opposites are out picturing in our world, then we create confusion, maybe at the least, but ultimately, as we see as humans continue to do, right, we create violence, right? We create infighting, we create separation, and we create othering. Now, these binaries or dualities are accepted as blind fact by many people. Again, just the way it is. This is how it's supposed to be. And eating of the apple then thrusts us into the binary world. Eating of the apple also thrusts us into an opportunity to understand and embrace our divinity and the divinity of all life. You see, the spiritual life and the spiritual path are actually designed to guide you beyond the binary. The spiritual path and the spiritual life is really designed to support you in breaking the binary. The binary may be an external fact. I'm not saying that the two things or opposites don't exist. The external fact, they may be an external fact or experience, but the binaries are not the truth. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, let's go to our understanding of color. This is something that I love, and the person that asked me the question on Instagram, I went to this and kind of gave them a quick explanation, and I'm happy that I can give you all more, right, and expand on this. But let's take our understanding of color. Now, a beam of white light from the sun appears as a unified whole. Right? Sun rays come down, and we've all seen sun rays. Many times the clouds can break up the rays and the light. And so you see these individual sun rays beaming down on our planet, on planet Earth. And so we all know and see it as an individual beam of light. However, when a prism is introduced, we uncover the hidden truth of what appears to be a single beam of white light. What we actually find is that this single beam of white light is actually a spectrum, right? It's actually comprised of multiple colors, and that those multiple colors make up what we know as our color spectrum, right? Violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Now, further, even beyond that spectrum, there's actually still another color that is present. But that color is hidden to the human eye. That color is known as infrared. Interestingly enough, infra comes from the Latin, which means under or below, or to think about hidden, right? It's below our range of sight. And so all of those colors are present. We can take a prism and use that to then see the spectrum, right? It breaks that single ray of light, and then we see the individual colors that make up the single. But then even then, our human eye still doesn't show us everything that's present. So binary thinking would say, there are 6 colors in the color spectrum, and while that would be a visible fact or experience, it would not be truth. Binary thinking would say, sun rays are single white beams shining down on Earth. That would be a visible fact or experience, but it would not be truth. Spiritual life, then, teaches us to see and enjoy the interplay of life. It's almost like a dance of removing the prism and placing it back over and over again. So we see the variety, but we recognize that behind the variety is unity, is harmony, is oneness. And we see the oneness and we see the unity and harmony, but we're not fooled by this appearance of one thing here in this visible world, because we recognize that it's actually many. And so as we put the prism back, we see the many and we marvel at the variety. We marvel at the many. In fact, I believe this is what meditation does for us. Meditation actually removes the prism. So if we think about life itself, our experience, the prism is present, right? If God is one, is the oneness, the thing, the single thing, like the single beam of light, here in this life experience, there's a prism. And so that single beam of light is burst out into variety. into the many different color spectrums and in the many different intellectual spectrums and the many different cultural spectrums and the many different recipes of life, if you will, right? And so in meditation, what we're actually doing is removing the prism and coming back into this profound awareness that there is oneness, that there is wholeness. Then, when we are out in the world, we know we are experiencing and playing in a world where, as Emerson says, being passes into appearance and unity into variety. So the spiritual life supports us in seeing the silliness of many of the binary debates of today. And interestingly enough, for simplicity, I use binary, I use opposites, I use duality, but life does not simply express as two things. It does not simply express as this or that, right? There's so many things here, but I want to share this because I think this is important. One could take this idea, what I'm saying now, and could see the variety of life and just say, oh, well, that's all God. So, trans people are God, and so that's it. And that would be loving to a point, right? Because then you wouldn't think that trans people are anything else, right? You wouldn't think that trans people are a mistake. You wouldn't think that someone who is on the autism spectrum, that's somehow a problem, right? Because you understand that using the metaphor of the color spectrum, you recognize that all life is a manifestation, a variety of this unity, right? But I think it's important that we also really understand, and I hope you hear this and could hear this even as I talked about the idea of meditation is removing the prism. Life, external life, the prism is present, and so we see the variety. But this should also move us into a place of celebrating the variety, right? It's not enough to just say, oh, well, that expression of variety is, it's God, but I'm gonna stay over here. No. In the same way that we celebrate red is not better than blue, and blue is not better than yellow, and yellow is not better than green, and green is not better than infrared, right? We recognize that there's this beautiful power in each of the colors individually. Then we understand that when we mix the colors, we create something even more powerful and beautiful it's not possible without the other color. Right? And so I want us to hear that. I hope you can hear and appreciate that when we start to understand and start to break the binary, it has the opportunity to move us into a place of celebration and of honoring and of lifting up every expression of God that shows up in this world of variety. And again, we remove the prism through our spiritual practices. We understand that behind it all is one. We understand that unity is expressing as variety. This is why we say things like we are the individualized expression of God, God being the one that is in back of, behind, and underneath all things, right? But we celebrate the unity of variety. And so as we, for simplicity, use a term like binary or duality, we recognize that life itself, God itself, cannot just express itself as just two things, right? And let's go back to color for a second, right? So one of the things the discovery of the color spectrum and the scientific understanding of color has led us to understanding is that everything in the physical universe emits light. Okay. And so what we perceive as color is really a dance of electrons vibrating at different rates, which then creates things like red, which then creates blue, which creates yellow, which creates green, etc. That's actually the electrons dancing at different rates. And so our eyes are able to interpret that light, interpret that dance of electrons that's emitted as light, and then we perceive it as a color, red. We perceive it as a color, blue. We perceive it as a color, yellow. And again, there's another color that's happening that we can't perceive, but is there when we have the right equipment, infrared. And I think this is important to understand when I talk about this idea, and this is a spiritual truth. Remember, what is darkness? Darkness is not a thing. Darkness is the absence of light. See, physically, we cannot see in darkness because our eyes don't see things, our eyes see light. So when there's complete darkness, the reason we can't see is because in that moment, nothing is emitting light. That's the only reason we can't see, because our eyes are actually capturing and receiving light. And so as soon as you turn on light, then objects are reflecting that light back into our eyes, and so then we're receiving that. And so that's why the spiritual truth is so powerful when we think about darkness has no origin, darkness has no mother, it has no father, it has no roots. It is simply the absence of light. And so if we want to change an experience of darkness physically or metaphysically, then we must bring the equivalent of light to it. We must bring the light of awareness. We must bring the light of truth. We must bring the light of love. We must bring the light of abundance. We must bring light to the situation. And by law, the way it works, darkness dissipates on its own. You don't have to push against it. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to talk to it and say, darkness, leave, as though it were an entity. Because light is. So again, everything emits light, and that light is always a spectrum of colors. It's actually a code. And so not only does everything in the universe emit light, but every element emits light, and that each element has a unique code. And we know elements then are the building blocks of everything, the building blocks of life. This is why Neil deGrasse Tyson famously says we are not figuratively, but literally stardust. Because when we look out in the cosmos and we start to look at the light of the cosmos, we start to look at the light of stars, we start to look at the light that is being emitted by planets, we start to look at the light that's being emitted by galaxies, we see the color code. And what do we see? We see that all life is made of the same stuff. You emit the same light codes as galaxies and planets and stars that are light years away. You emit the same light codes as the redwoods in California. You emit the same light codes as Mount Everest and Mount Fuji and Mount Kilimanjaro. You emit the same light codes as a blade of grass and fallen snow. And so this is how and why we can understand the unity of all things. This is how we can understand that we are not figuratively, but literally stardust. And so in truth, what then we understand about life, we talk about breaking the binary, the truth is that we burst forth not into duality, but we actually burst forth into multiplicity. But for the sake of simplicity, we speak of this phenomenon as duality. And the spiritual idea that we must embrace after eating the apple is that back of and behind of all appearance is one unified whole. Behind variety, there's unity. So this means what? This means that variety is holy. This means that variety is sacred. This means that multiplicity is divine. That means that intersectionality is spirituality. This means that as spiritual people, we must always seek to live and think and operate in the binary, but not of it. Because we recognize the multiplicity. We understand, just as we affirm, P. White said it earlier in the meditation, right? There is no spot where God is not. We understand then that means there's no spot where you are not. The things that make up you are present light years away and present as close as your breath, and present in the blade of grass, and present in the grain of sand, and present as your entire human family. And because of that truth, what we come to know and understand then is that, again, multiplicity is divine, intersectionality is spirituality. And when we start to do that, it can open up our hearts and minds to think about life differently. Something that comes to my mind, and I was prepping for this sermon, I was thinking about a false assumption that the binary moves us into. So many of you know, and I don't know where you fall on this particular conversation, but I'm speaking of it from this lens, and I hope you can hear it. We recognize that there is a binary debate around autism and vaccines, right? There are some people that 100% believe that vaccines are the cause for autism, right? And have caused autism in countless beautiful souls, right? There are other people who believe that that's absolutely not true, right? That the vaccines have nothing to do with it, that there are other beautiful souls that have received the vaccines and are not on the autism spectrum, and that's what it is. And so we have this binary. But I think when we start to understand this idea about unity and variety, I think the wrong questions are being asked because the wrong perspective, the true perspective isn't there. First of all, there's the assumption that the expression of autism is wrong or bad. So there must be some culprit, right? What would cause this unwanted, wrong, bad thing? Oh, it was those shots. But if we understand the truth that multiplicity is divine, if we understand the truth that variety is holy, that variety is sacred, I personally know what I understand and hold to be true is that every being on the autistic spectrum is a beautiful, holy, sacred child of God. There's nothing wrong with them. And so they came here, they're just a color on the spectrum. That's it. And so I don't need to move into a space or place of blaming anyone, but I have the opportunity now to celebrate them as they are. Now, the issue is because we live in a society that has been rooted, grounded, laws have been made, and a society has been created based on this binary, those that present on that spectrum do not always have the support that's needed. But I thank God that even in this moment, in this time, we're starting to experience a new reality, right? There are those that have been on the autism spectrum their entire life and they didn't know it. And now that they know it, now that it has been rightly identified, one, they get to let go of their unworthiness story. They get to let go of their what is wrong with me story. They get to let go of why can't I do this like other people do it? Why don't I read the way that other people read? Why don't I process information the way other people process information? And so we're starting to create a world that is wholly embracing this expression of variety. We could use a number of other subjects to talk about the same thing, but I think it's so very important, and I trust that you can hear it from this lens, that you start to understand that there's nothing wrong with the expression, the variety of expressions that we see in the human experience. And so when we start from the premise that there's something wrong with it, then that's when we move into the blame. That's when we live in this thing of original sin. Now it's just, we're putting the original sin on some pharmaceutical industry. And we've seen even the work, parents that have approached their experience with their children from that perspective, right? Understanding that variety is holy, is sacred, that multiplicity is divine, and intersectionality is spirituality. Now, in the spiritual path, this is an ancient idea that has been talked about and written about and shared in so many different ways, trying to get humans to understand this, right? Trying to get humans to break the binary. One of the places that's on my list I look forward to visiting one day when I'm able to visit the country of India. The Elephanta Caves in India. It's on the Elephanta Island, and that island is about, 6 miles east of Mumbai. And in these caves, you will find these ancient carvings, magnificent carvings. And the most famous, and the one that everyone goes to, is the Trimurti Sadashiva statue, or carving, which is the three-faced Shiva. And this carving is over 17 feet tall, right? It's a marvel to know that there are beautiful souls that went into these caves. I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they had enough sunlight to come into the caves, that they were able to carve these magnificent spiritual truths into stone that we get to experience today and actually glean the spiritual truth from it. And this three-faced Shiva, the three faces, have a very distinct meaning. And of course, I first learned about this. We talked about Joseph Campbell last week in The Power of Myth. I want to pull from that again, because this is where I first learned about this statue. The face in the center is the mask of eternity. Some would call the mask of God. But importantly, what it is it's that wholeness, it's that unity that we've been talking about that's back and behind all things. It represents the transcendent. It represents that which is beyond and outside of the binary. Now, in conversation with Bill Moyers, Joseph Campbell says this about the other two faces. Whenever one moves out of the transcendent, one comes into a field of opposites. These two pairs of opposites come forth as male and female from the two sides. What has eaten of the tree of knowledge, not only of good and evil, but of male and female, of right and wrong, of this and that, of light and dark, everything in the field of time is dual, past and future, dead and alive. All this, being and non-being, is and isn't. Bill Moyers asked the question, and what's the significance of them being beside the mask of God, the mask of eternity? What is this sculpture saying to us? Campbell goes on. The mask represents the middle, and the two represent the two opposites, and they always come in pairs. And put your mind in the middle. Most of us put our minds on the side of the good against what is we think of as evil. It was Heraclitus, I think, who said, "For God, all things are good and right and just, but for man, some things are right and others are not." You're in the field of time when you're man or human, and one of the problems of life is to live in the realization of both terms. That is to say, I know the sinner, and I know that good and evil are simply temporal apparitions. So you see, Campbell is giving us the same idea. As I use the color spectrum, right, to understand and reveal, right, using the principle of correspondence in this way, as above, so below, as below, so above, we can look at this scientific truth and understand a metaphysical truth. Now, back in 2015, in our October series, Superstition Ain't the Way, I started that series with a sermon, Whose Devil Is It Anyway? And in that sermon, can't re-preach the sermon, but there was something that I talked about there, again, understanding how the spiritual idea continues to exist. In Buddhism, we learn about the middle way. This is central to the teaching of the Buddha. And so I want to give you a practical understanding of what this looks like, right? I talked about a lot of different things, right? We can look at all of the different binaries that are here that need to be broken. We can look at all the binaries that are causing debates. We can look at all the binaries that are causing violence and separation. But in a practical way, in our individual lives, we can think about it in this way. And so I'm going to give you a couple different examples, 3 categories. If we think about the middle face as eternity, and then there's one on the left and one on the right. So in the center, we have being wise with money. And then on either side, we have being wasteful. And on the other side, we have being stingy, right? And so being wise with money means that sometimes you just circulate, right? And in a certain context, that's necessary, and that would be wisdom. It would also be wise not to circulate at sometimes, or not to give someone your money sometimes, but to live in I ain't giving nobody nothing, or to live in I'm just spending, right, would be out of the middle way. Here's another one. Self-confidence is the middle way. On one side, you have no self-esteem, and on the other side, you have arrogance. Breaking the binary would learn to live in self-confidence. Self-confidence is different than arrogance. And of course, self-confidence is different than the mask of no self-esteem. In the middle, we have being brave or bravery. On the other side, we have being reckless. And on another side, we have being fearful. Sometimes what people call being brave is pure recklessness. And some people just live in that. They're just reckless. They just, I'm doing it. Right? That's not bravery. It's recklessness. And then at the same time, to live on the complete opposite end would be to just be fearful. Bravery is the middle way. 2 more examples. Perseverance is the middle way. Do nothingness or shiftlessness is on one side, and ruthless ambition is on the other. The middle way is perseverance, to keep going. This is why we learn the story of the tortoise and the hare, right? The tortoise was living in perseverance. The tortoise definitely didn't have ruthless ambition, but to the point that the tortoise is continuing to move and continuing to move, the tortoise wasn't doing nothing, right? Or that word that I don't like to use often, but what some would call lazy. That's not what the tortoise was doing. The tortoise was operating in, through, and as the middle way of perseverance. The last one, compassion. Compassion is the middle way. Being overly emotional, or what we might call as extra, would be on one side. And then being cold, rigid, stoic, or lifeless is on the other side. The opportunity is to live in compassion. The opportunity is to live with passion, right? Not being more or on one or less on one or the other side, but living in the middle. And this is what breaking the binary looks like, even in our individual lives and our individual expressions, to think about that. And it's interesting because when we live in the binary, and particularly in this moment, my mind is just coming back to money, because I know that's something that's always on our minds, right? Being wise with money, wasteful or stingy. But if we understand and we break the binary, then all of a sudden, what do? We remove ourselves from the guilt and shame, right? We remove ourselves from guilting ourselves and shaming ourselves because we circulated money in a certain way, or guilting ourselves and shaming ourselves because we realize, oh, I could have spent my money in a different way and I was withholding, I was holding on. When we break the binary, we also then move outside of this idea of sin and shame and guilt. So this living and thinking and operating beyond the binary, it is actually acknowledging a third way in these examples that I gave. And again, in truth, we know that there are actually infinite ways. We know that there's variety, that there's multiplicity. That is the spectrum. Embrace the spectrum and live in the spectrum. Because when we do that, again, it starts to free us. It frees us from this shame and guilt. It frees us from this idea of unworthiness. It frees us from comparison. Right? It's impossible to compare yourself to infinite possibilities because you're one of the possibilities. And you're supposed to be here as that possibility and that expression. And so to close, I want to take you all to a story. It's a story I love. It's a story that many of you may be familiar with, from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I love that there's all of these little wisdom stories within the greater story of The Alchemist and Santiago's journey of his personal legend. But there are all of these wonderful spiritual nuggets that Paulo Coelho, he writes these wonderful short stories and shares these short stories in other forms and formats. And so I want to share this story with you because it's another way to break the binary and think about all of these truths that we've been talking about today in a new way. A certain shopkeeper sent his son to learn about the secret of happiness from the wisest man in the world. The lad wandered through the desert for 40 days and finally came upon a beautiful castle, high atop a mountain. It was there that the wise man lived. Rather than finding a saintly man, though, our hero, on entering the main room of the castle, saw a hive of activity. Tradesmen came and went. People were conversing in the corners. A small orchestra was playing soft music, and there was a table covered with platters of the most delicious food in that part of the world. The wise man conversed with everyone, and the boy had to wait for 2 hours before it was his turn to be given the man's attention. The wise man listened attentively to the boy's explanation of why he had come, but told him that he didn't have time just then to explain the secret of happiness. He suggested that the boy look around the palace and return in 2 hours. Meanwhile, I want to ask you to do something, said the wise man, handing the boy a teaspoon that held 2 drops of oil. As you wander around, carry the spoon with you, without allowing the oil to spill. The boy began climbing and descending the many stairways of the palace, keeping his eyes fixed on the spoon. After 2 hours, he returned to the room where the wise man was. "Well," asked the wise man, "did you see the Persian tapestries that are hanging in my dining hall? Did you see the garden that it took the master gardener 10 years to create? Did you notice the beautiful parchments in my library?" The boy was embarrassed and confessed that he had observed nothing. His only concern had been not to spill the oil that the wise man had entrusted to him. "Then go back and observe the marvels of my world," said the wise man. "You cannot trust a man if you don't know his house." Relieved, the boy picked up the spoon and returned to his exploration of the palace. This time, observing all the works of art on the ceilings and the walls, he saw the gardens, the mountains all around him, the beauty of the flowers, and the taste with which everything had been selected. Upon returning to the wise man, he related in detail everything he had seen. "But where are the drops of oil I entrusted to you?" asked the wise man. Looking down at the spoon he held, the boy saw that the oil was gone. "Well, there is only one piece of advice I can give you," said the wisest of wise men. "The secret of happiness is to see all the marvels of the world and never forget the drops of oil on the spoon." Leaving Eden is like the invitation of the wise man to take in the entire palace. But for many of us, as we have been given this idea of original sin, as we are living in the binary of right and wrong, of shame and guilt, we're focused on the drops of oil in the spoon. Oh, I don't want to mess up because I was given this instruction. Meanwhile, we miss everything. The reality is, when we break the binary, and when we use the spiritual practices, as I said, meditation is really removing the prism so we can see the whole, and then returning the prism and play in this beautiful dance of variety and celebrate in this beautiful dance of multiplicity and recognize and call it holy and call it beautiful and call it divine, while also remembering that this variety is an expression of unity, while also remembering that this single beam of sunlight is all of these different color spectrums, and remembering that the color spectrums is really a single beam of light. That's what holding the spoon and taking in the marvels represents. When you break the binary, you're living as the wise man told us, and that's why it's the secret to happiness. Because then you're living without fear. Then shame and guilt, it's impossible for it to enter the conversation. Then not only have you accepted the invitation by eating the apple and coming into life, but you're now fully living life. We're going to close this series next week. And I'm excited about that because if we recognize that leaving Eden is necessary, and as we leave Eden, we come into the world of the binary so that we can break the binary and learn to live beyond the binary. Once we have done that, that is then how we return back to the garden. And so I look forward to sharing that wisdom and truth with you next week. But to this truth and all that has been shared today, I simply say amen, ashe, and so it is.
Ah, yes, yes. You know, I sit there off stage left and watch PG as he delivers these messages. And one of the things that I admire the most is how he does it with care, how he breaks it down, how he provides examples, and how he expands on ideas, because it's so important. We've been inundated with information and misinformation and miseducation of us all spiritually. And so now it's time that we go back, take the time, and undo those things that have kept us bound, that has kept us from living the middle way,
Yes, yes.
that has kept us in fear of our own divinity, that has kept us in fear of another. It is so important that we understand and live this middle way. Yes. Break the binary, whatever word you want to use, what if that term makes you feel too weird and antsy, whatever opposites, whatever word you want to use. But that you got to understand this thing we call being human is only an aspect
Yes.
of what we really are.
Yeah.
We get to play at this thing called being human. We get to honor and bring love and compassion to others who are playing at this thing called being human. And nowhere is sin in the mix.
Absolutely.
Thank you, PG.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
One other thing I wanted to say, if you have questions, this is the perfect week to come to God Talk.
Absolutely.
If you have questions about anything from last week's message or this week's message or anything related to the series or your understanding of this story in the Bible, come today. Bring your question today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so as you can see here on the screen, this is our time for giving. You've seen it throughout the stream. It's very easy to give to CSC. And as we always say, give what feels good. You can go to our website or you can text to give, 347-744-9500. There is a $10 minimum to give. But it's important that there's an energy of joy, of ease, of goodness, devoid of so many of the ways that we've been taught to think about money, circulating money, and especially when it comes to circulating money in churches and spiritual communities. Give what feels good, because that is what you're really planting. That's what you're actually giving, is that feeling tone, and that's what's coming back to you, right? It might not be the dollar amount, right? You can give $5 and need 10,000, and 10,000 can come to you. It's not about the amount of money that you need, but also it may not be money that you need. You may need to be pushed to the front of the line for something. You may need an opportunity. You may need for that delay to be removed, right? You may need a roadblock to be removed.
You may need more time, whatever
Exactly, whatever it is. That's you'll be receiving what you need. Right? And so even when we give of our funds, it is symbolic, right, of recognizing, circulation. And as I give freely, I receive freely. All, right? Money included, but not just money, right? Very important. And so when we give from this awareness, when we give from this place, then we can affirm with joy and absolute expectation. All the money that I use, returns to me multiplied.
Returns to me multiplied.
In a never-ending cycle.
In a never-ending cycle.
Of increase.
Of increase.
And enjoyment.
And enjoyment.
To that we say amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
So it is.
So it is. Yes, yes. Well, looking at the time, we have about 15 minutes until the God Talk starts. So we look forward to many of you joining us. Again, if you are a first-time guest, I'll put the graphic up on the screen. If you're a first-time guest and want to join us for the God Talk, text WELCOME to this number you see here on your screen, 347-472-1078. Complete the information, particularly your email address, and you will actually receive a reply once you've done that, an email with the God Talk information, so you can join us today. For everyone else, if you're already on the mailing list, go to your inbox, go to any email that was sent, or the most recent email that was sent on Friday, and you'll see the God Talk information there. So we look forward to seeing many of you shortly. For those that are not able to join, please enjoy the remainder of your Sunday and the remainder of your weekend. We trust that you will have an awesome, powerful, love-filled, and empowering week. We look forward to connecting for the Momentum Prayer Call. Again, a reminder, Put it in your calendar, and create this habit, right, of being there and setting your mind in a specific direction every Wednesday in the middle of the week, which will support you in profound ways. For those that are not able to make the call, by all means, use the playback number, and all of us will be back together again next Sunday, which will be the first Sunday of the season of fall. And of course, we will be closing out this series, Finding Eden. We love you, we bless you, and we look forward to seeing you all real soon. All right? Bye for now.
Bye for now.